Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. This video is about the assembly of the fully composite 2.75 meter wingspan Corsa electric glider designed by Dr. James Hammond, built by Heroic, and I purchased mine through Hyperflight. Great shout out to Neil and to Dr. James. I had a few issues with the model when I unpacked it, but they were resolved very quickly by the pair of them, so thanks to those guys. So this, as I say, video is about the assembly of this model. There's not a lot to be done. You've got to mount the servos in the tail, you've got to mount the servos in the wing and motor mount, but because of the construction of the model and the thinness of the wings and the tail, getting things to fit is quite a bit of a fiddle, can be a bit of a fiddle. Anyway, let's have a look at the various videos I took of the stages of the build to get it to a state where it now is ready for its maiden flight. Unfortunately, my Corsa didn't come with a firewall engine mounting backplate, so I've 3D printed my own one in ABS. So that now fits quite nicely in the fuselage nose, and in order to stick that to the fuselage I've just put a balsa backing piece on it, so that when it does go in, I know it's going into the right position, which I need it to be dead flush with the front of the fuselage, not recessed. I've lined up the motor, which is the F3426-7 X-Power. I've lined that up with everything with the carbon fibre folding prop spinner, so I'm all good to go to glue it in place. And to do that I'm going to use the West Systems G-Flex epoxy adhesive. I've lightly abraded the inside of the fuselage sides where the firewall is going to go, and I've also abraded the firewall as well. So with that done, I'm going to now coat the firewall as well, because when I 3D printed it, I put grooves in it to make sure I got enough glue in there. A job that needs to be done before fitting the servos to the rear of the fuselage. You're given a control push rod for the elevator. Got a standard metal clevis there which goes in the servo arm, and this one goes into or onto the tailplane via wire that goes through to each half of the tailplane elevators. But that's a 2mm diameter bush or ball in there, and the wire is only about 1.6 so you need to sleeve the brass ball out. If you can just about make it out in there. I've actually got a sleeve inside that ball, so it's a 2mm outside diameter, and then I've drilled it to suit the wire connecting, call it a torque rod, the wire that connects to the two elevator halves, and there's now no slop in that at all. So that needs doing, otherwise you get too much slop in the elevator, too much play. So now I've done that, I can turn my attention to the fitting of the two servos in the rear of the fuselage, in the tailplane, in the fin area. The servos I'm using are King Max servos, and they're 9mm thick servos for the tail for the elevator and the fin and rudder, I should say, and the same for the ailerons, but I'm using the 10 millimeter ones for the flaps, more heavier duty really. The kit comes with pre-cut ply mounting frames, which are absolutely fine. No need to replace those with plastic ones or 3D printed ones, which I could equally do, I suppose. And I'm going to glue those to the inside pocket in the fin in a moment. What I've done, using the clevises supplied, I've done the grinding exercise. You can see there, if I hold it in my hand, the grinding exercise on the clevis, hopefully you can see it, so that it allows it to go over the servo arm. Now the other end of that one, this is the rudder one, when I was putting it together, the pin, put my hands there, the pin and the end of the clevis actually broke out, came free. And I was going to bin it, but I thought, no, what I'll do, I'll drill it out for 2 millimeters and put a 2 millimeter cap head bolt right the way through the clevis arm, the control horn on the rudder. And then I thought, well, that's a nice, neat way of holding everything in place. Sure, if I want to adjust it, I've got to unbolt it, but that's no great problem. So with that done, I can now sort out where everything's going to go. And it is a tight fit. And one of the things I've realised is that once the rudder servo's in place, you're not really going to be able to get it out again. I can get a 1 screw on the servo there, but the other one is behind the fuselage. So I suppose if push came to shove and I needed to replace the servo, I could drill a hole in the bottom of the rudder there, at the bottom of the fin, and get to the screw to take that out of its little plywood tray. I'm using the trays that came with the kit, and what I'm going to do is just position that servo, put it in place. I'll put my little bolt through. Yeah, I don't want any slop in there, so let's just use my hex driver and push that in. So now there's absolutely no play in there whatsoever. I could actually possibly use a shorter bolt, we'll see. But anyway, the main point of this exercise is to see where everything's going to go. So that servo is going to be in there like that. And then I've got to think about the elevator servo, which obviously has got a push rod going up there. Now this, let's just temporarily push the cable down the fuselage. I'm not going to mount the servos yet because I'm going to run the cables through, connect them, and then withdraw them back into the fuselage. I just want to see how everything goes. Okay, now the line for the elevator servo is vertical down there. I can't come any lower than obviously this push rod arm, sorry. So that's about the position there. Now the problem is if you take the supplied clevis and ball joint there, that's what you're supplied with. But if you look at that, there's no way that's going to fit because that's the centre place there. If I just move that servo arm to centre, I know I should have done it electronically, but that finishes there. So I've got another 10 millimeters, which even if I screw those right together, close together, like that this still doesn't give me enough room. Well, maybe I could possibly just about do it. Maybe just about do it with that. It's going to be touch and go. But the problem is, what I found when I did that, that is not a brilliant fit. So I'd have to put that, you see I can just keep turning it because there's no thread in that part. So what I would have to do is mount them together like that, tightly, and then run some, either solder that in place, take this ball joint end off, solder it in place, then screw that back on again. Or what I could do is, I need a ball joint for this end here. What I could do is create another push rod out of my spares kit and put a Z-bend in to this. The only problem with the Z-bend is, again, it's maintenance, because once that push rod's up there and it's in position for the wire that goes through the elevator halves, you're not going to be able to maintain it. You're not going to be able to unclip it from the servo arm, and you'd end up having to take the servo out, possibly be all manner of problems. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to solder this arm in place there as it stands, and then I've got a rigid connection of ball joint, clevis, but I'm going to have to make again the same relief grind out of that to go over the servo arm, because if I don't do that, albeit to be fair, the elevator hasn't got much up and down movement, I may not have to do that, to be quite honest. But I've cut that servo arm very, very short. I haven't rounded it off yet. I've cut it very short, and the reason I've cut it short is because if I don't, my hatch cover won't fit, because that is too tall. If I push that in again now, try and get that servo cable out of the way. Just push it there for the time being. So if I put that servo cover on there, that arm is just touching that as it is. So as a consequence, if I put the clevis on there, then the clevis is too wide. The clevis there is too wide, because that will bear against the boss of the servo arm. In the end, I've decided to go with the Z-bend, otherwise it just wouldn't work. So that's what it looks like in there, very tight. But now that should operate, and the push rod with the Z-bend won't foul anything there. So that's what I'm going to go with. So time to glue everything in. So looking at the Corsa wing next, and putting the push rods in place. Now the supplied push rods are standard 2mm clevises, which are these, which are fine, but they're an absolute nightmare to try and prise them apart when you're fitting them to the control horns on the on the control surfaces. So I thought of various ways around this, and I've actually ordered some specialist ones, but rather than that I thought of another approach, which is taking on board what I did with the tail servos. And what I did there was, because the pin came out of this metal clevis here, I decided to drill it out for a 2mm bolt, which I put through, and I put a nylock on there, which is fine. So I've copied that idea, but this time what I've done is I've removed, you can see here, I hold my hand up there, you can see, oops, no you can't. You can see the clevis pin there, and that, as I say, had fallen out of the clevis on the tailplane. So I thought, well, if it falls out, then there must be a pretty easy job to get them out. And it was, all I had to do was file down the welded, let's just see again if you can get it, file down the welded bit of the pin and then pull the pin out. Next up, what I did was I tapped the metal clevis with a 2mm tap that through like so. So having cut the thread, just going to test it now. Just feed the, just see that there, through one, through the other, and then that's tight there. So I'll just repeat that for the 3 others that I've got to do, and I think that will be a good fit. I had to drill out the horn, which is quite difficult, but once again I use this to do that. So now what I've got is a situation where I can mount the clevis I won't put the bolt in at the moment, but you can see here I can mount the clevis on the horn and put a small 2mm bolt through there, nice and compact. It won't come out because it's threaded, and I can always put a bit of either super glue on that or some thread lock, and that gives me a really nice close fitting slimline clevis mount. Having checked to make sure that the servos are all stuck in place, it's time to finish off the wiring, namely replacing the servo lead shrouds with a bit of heat shrink to give me better security, and also takes up less space in the wing. So all I'm going to do now is just push that cable away. So rather than using the flat type servo covers, mainly because they won't fit, because my servo arm sticks up too high and I haven't shortened them, I'm going to use the ones with the blister on, but they need to be cut to size. So I'll use the flat ones because they're a perfect fit, and just cut these around the outline there of that, and that should be a good fit. Trimmed to fit, perfect. And I'm just going to use tape, clear tape, to hold them in place. I'll seal the edges as well. So here's one I did earlier, which is that one there. with the clear tape round it. I've laser cut the new battery tray, mounted it as low as possible because that's the only way I can fit my 2300 4S in there, and I need to get that fairly far forward initially anyway for the CFG to be on the furthest forward mark, the 90mm. Obviously after flying I can move it back and be able to move the battery back. Anyway, that's been cut and epoxied in place, so I've just got to now just put my anti-slip matting in place, which I'll just hot glue in place. There we go, that's fine. Just wait for that to go off now. Get rid of the old spidery webby bits, and that's it done, apart from sorting out the cabling now. And so the I've already hooked up the ESC and the rudder and elevator, and I've just got to do the flaps and ailerons now. So that's the next job. Well, as you can see from the various videos, some things are a bit of a fiddle and things needed to be changed a little bit. I'm very pleased with what I did with the clevises by using the 2mm bolts. I think that was a good outcome. Rather than I did order specialist clevises to be used on the wings, but I've not had to use those. So the model is now set up. I'm just configuring the radio for the various controls, throws on the control surfaces and things like crow, etc. So once I've got all those sorted, the model will be ready for its maiden flight, which hopefully, if the weather improves, then that should be in the course of the next few days. I will put a video up when I do the maiden flight. As per usual, if you like what you've seen, please put a thumbs up down below, put any comments, and I'll get back to you. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. It helps with the YouTube algorithms. Anyway guys, thanks for watching. See you on the next one. Cheers.